Yes, it is so good to be back in the Word of God. You remember Jesus chose 12 men to follow him full time, and he called them apostles. The word apostle means the sent ones. And they were his representative, his spokesman. Some believe that the 12 were kind of uncommon men, holy men. Whenever you see them in an icon or a statue, there is an aura above their head, and always they carry like a book or something. Not so, because they were uneducated. So it's not all of them, but some of them were not. So, but during the sermons and reading the Gospels, we've discovered together that the apostles were organized actually in three groups of four. And the leader of the group was always the same person. The leader of the first group was Peter, remember? And the group was characterized by their desire for leadership. And the group contained James, John, and Andrew. Very good. And we concluded that at least the first four apostles were so common that some of us identified with one of them, or maybe with two, half and half. But Simon Peter remember, he was unreliable, he was a shifty person, he wanted to involve in a project. He was the first one jumping in and the first one jumping out. So you could not be very, sure that he will stay till the end. Impulsive, with tons of zeal, volcanic, but shifty. Okay, Jesus needed him to be a rock, dependable, strong, and stable. Well, that was the plan for future, but who he was then and there, he was like this. And then James was the one who always wanted to be the first because he thought he deserved this leadership, like the primacy. His nickname, and by the way, a lot of them, and I hope at the end of this series I'll have a sermon just about their nicknames. Almost, I don't know, maybe more than half they had nicknames. And James' nickname was the son of Thunder. Very good. Hey, you paid attention. Great. Because he was like the sound of the judgment. He was the sound of destruction. He was so ambitious that he asked his mother to convince Jesus. By the way, James was Jesus' cousin. So he used his mother to talk to Jesus, and he asked to give him the leadership of the apostles. By that time, Peter was the leader of the apostles. And now he thought, I will use my mom. So kind of sneaky. But John, the third one, was ambitious. He was reckless. Remember, he was intolerant. He wanted to kill an entire village. Just like that. He was very categorical and realistic. For him, everything was black and white. Nothing in between. It was or black or white. He was so passionate about truth that he lacked compassion, actually. And he was so harsh with people. He behaved like an extremist, like a fanatic, like a judgmental and critical, reckless, disloyal person, but Jesus changed him. At the end, we know him as the apostle of love. Yeah, totally changed. Andrew. Well, Andrew, if you think, he was the little brother of Peter, he was like, no. He was a robust man, a fisherman. He was bold. He was courageous. He was prudent, something that Peter never was. But also contemplative, supporter. He was spiritual. He was involved in the spiritual life. And actually, he brought Peter to Jesus, remember? He always was eclipsed by Peter, his brother, but he didn't care. He said, I'm here for support. And actually, the three of them, Peter, James, and John, they really needed Andrew. He was stable, he was balanced, and he brought balance to that group. He was a real leader, actually. If you ask me who was the real leader there, he was the real leader, not Peter. But Jesus chose him, and we see him, Peter, after the Pentecost. He was transformed in that rock, in that leader. Well, if the first small group inside the big group of 12 was of leaders, the second group, I don't know, do you remember what was the characteristic of the second group? They were thinkers. They were thinkers. They were analytic, pragmatic, and earthbound. So if the first group was like with their heads in the clouds all the time, Andrew was kind of pulling them down. But the second group was so earthbound, but that they never realized how earthbound were sometimes. And ridiculous. Ridiculous. Their leader was Philip, and the group welcomed Thomas. Well, we don't need an introduction for Thomas, right? We'll talk about him later. Matthew and Nathaniel. And Nathaniel sometimes was called Bartholomew. So when we talk about Nathaniel or Bartholomew, it is one and the same person. For the next Sundays, I will challenge you to investigate this group with me and the group of thinkers, and to learn from their mistakes. Because, by the way, they were common like us. Today we'll talk about Philip, and I really thought, how should I to give a title to my sermon? And the best I thought was, be smart for 5 minutes. I don't know. We'll see. Okay, just bear with me. Be smart for 5 minutes. And what means that? To be smart for 5 minutes. Well, years ago, I heard a statement. In life, what it takes is to be smart for 5 minutes, and then the course of your life is set. And you know what? There are some sayings that influenced my life, and this one is one of them. I can't say I was smart for 5 minutes, so I'm still struggling with this. But I think Philip is one of these guys that he was really smart for less than 5 minutes, actually. And then his life was set. And that this saying is not just, popular saying, but also I believe it's a scriptural. It's based on the Bible. If you want to open the Bible with me, Ecclesiastes chapter 9, verse 11. I love this verse. Ecclesiastes chapter 9, verse 11. It's awesome. Actually, it's so awesome, I have it in my classroom. I print it out and I have it in my classroom. Again, I saw that under the sun, the race is not to the swift, nor the battle to the strong, nor bread to the wise, nor riches to the intelligent, nor favor to those with knowledge, but time and chance happen to them. This is Solomon, okay? You could be a fast runner, but if you have a muscle pain during the race, the race is won by the next runner, right? Not by you. Or you have some cramps or anything, it's hard to maintain the speed, so the race is not won by you. Time and chance happen to all. You could be very intelligent, but if you think too much, the riches go to the next in line, who was smart just for 5 minutes. Not like you, not like the intelligent. If you are smart for 5 minutes, the future is yours, say some people, and I think Solomon agrees with this. For sure, this future will change you. Interesting. This future is set, but that future will change you. You will be changed in the future because you chose right. This is what happened to Philip. Philip was a person focused on details. So this is why he was not capable to see the whole perspective. He was pessimistic. He was analyzing the situation. He was inclined to find reasons why that situation was impossible. And his word was, no, will not work. That will not work. So he was that kind of a person. He was pragmatic and cynical. His skepticism was getting him into troubles, and his rigidity made him to take the part of unbelief and rather of belief. So actually, if you remember always Thomas as the one, is like, oh, he is not the he doubtful, always doubting. Well, Philip was his boss, okay? Philip is a Greek name meaning the lover of horses. I didn't know if you knew that. Philip, but yeah, you knew that? A lover of horses. Philip the Apostle was probably named in honor to the Philip the Tetrarch, who had some years before the future apostle's birth done so much for that region. Actually, he raised the status of Bethsaida to as the capital of the province. And probably his Philip's parents thought, okay, let's name our son after Philip. We don't know his Hebrew name. Always they had a Hebrew name. But if you read the Gospels, Philip is just Philip. And it's a Greek name. It's not a Jewish name. Philip the Apostle was from Bethsaida. Do you remember who? Who was from Bethsaida? That was like 2 or 3 months ago.
The possessed man?
No, that's the Galilean guy. It's not. It's actually the other side of the lake. Bethsaida. And they moved in Capernaum. Oh, come on. I thought now you say, oh, it's Peter and Andrew. Right? Andre, yeah. Andrew was from Bethsaida. Peter was from Bethsaida. And remember, they moved in Capernaum because Capernaum was better for business. And this is why they get together with John and James. And they became friends because of the business. But Peter and Andrew were friends with Philip. Probably they went to the same synagogue, In that small city, it was just one synagogue. and they knew each other, and they were friends. And we know Philip was a fisherman. In John 21, he's presented as the one going to fish with Peter. John 21, verses 2 and 3 says, Simon Peter, Thomas, called the twin, Nathanael of Cana in Galilee, the sons of Zebedee, and the 2 others of his disciples were together. Simon Peter said to them, I am going fishing. They said to him, we will go with you. They went out and got into the boat, but that night they caught nothing. So maybe you say, hey, I haven't heard his name, right? It's not his name in here. Philip is not. But it says 2 others of his disciples were together. Now think about it. There were Peter and the sons of Zebedee. Peter, John, and James. And then you have Thomas and Nathanael. What do you see here? The first group and the second group. But you don't have Matthew. By the way, Matthew was not a fisherman. Matthew was a what? A tax collector. So you have 3 out of the first group and another one that is not named, Andrew. And you have 2 of this group, and we know the third one is not a fisherman. So Philip from Bethsaida was actually the one, because Andrew and Philip were always together. If you read the Gospels, you'll find them together. So it's not hard to understand that. And it is interesting to find that Jesus chose his disciples differently than actually I would do. I don't know about you, but if I would be Jesus, I would chose the best of the best, But Jesus said, no, I want to choose someone who are together. They were together. They are friends. And also relatives. Friends, relatives, people with same vocations, normal abilities. But Jesus is different than me. And I know why he's doing it, what he was doing it. So Philip is the one who was actually first called by Jesus. The first two disciples, they went after Jesus, they followed Jesus, were who? The first two disciples that they went to follow Jesus. Who were they? Come on, you should know that by now. I know it's a new year, but new opportunities. Who?
James and John.
Andrew, very good. And?
Who said James? No.
James? No. But who? John. Because this is in John and Andrew. Because this is recorded just in the Gospel of John. So they followed Jesus. They were disciples of John the Baptist. So they went after Jesus. Andrew went home and he brought Peter. But interesting. If you open the book, John's Gospel, chapter 1, verse 43, it says this: the next day, so that happened this day, next day, Jesus decided to go to Galilee. He found Philip and said to him, "Follow me." Do you understand this? Philip is the first of all disciples. Jesus called them 3 times. And I'm talking about the first time. So this is the first disciple that Jesus goes straight to him and says, "Follow me." This is very important. Interesting enough, when Philip went to his friend, now, Nathanael, he said the following: "We have found him of whom Moses in the law and also the prophets wrote, Jesus of Nazareth, the son of Joseph." And there are some people mocking us when we tell them that, we are Christians and we're born again. They're like, "Oh, you found Jesus." Have you heard that? What happened to him? Oh, he found Jesus. And actually, Nathanael said, "We found Jesus. We found the Messiah." But wait a minute, who found who? Because the one text says that Jesus found Philip, and the other text, Philip says, "We found Jesus." Which one is true? Both. Actually, both are true from a human standpoint. But if you ask God, He will always say, "I am choosing you. I am the one." How do we know this? Well, John 15:16, Jesus said, "You did not choose me, but I chose you and appointed you that you should go and bear fruit, and that your fruit should abide, so that whatever you ask the Father in my name, He may give it to you." So who chose who? For sure, Jesus chose them. Why? Because all these apostles were given to him by the Father. So this is the Father's gift to him. And this is why he chose these 12. Philip's heart was searching for the Messiah. And he was searching for God. But also he was seeking for people to tell them about God. So this is why he went to his good friend Nathanael, and he said, "Hey, we found Messiah." For sure, friendship are the best soil for growing saving faith. What is most beautiful than friends challenging their friends to be believers? And if you don't have friends, they are not believers. You have friends they are just believers. Try to find new friends, unbelievers. If you don't know, ask me after the service. We will have a conversation about this. But I think it's good to have unsafe friends and share time, share conversation, and then share Christ with them. Philip was at the end of his research. He found the one who will bring salvation to him and to Israel. So Philip was 5 minutes smart, and he took the right decision to follow Jesus. This is why I said, be smart for 5 minutes. He chose Jesus. He followed Jesus. As we will see, Philip was one of the most indecisive person. He was not firm. But for the first time in his life, and probably for the only time in his life, Philip took a decision not based on details or protocols, but on his faith. 5 minutes of madness. He never done that. 5 minutes of not being Philip, actually, that changed his life forever. Was he perfect afterwards?
No.
Nope. Actually, we know how he was indeed, because of his mistakes, after his dedication to follow Jesus. We don't know anything about him before, but we know about him after he met Jesus. He was a mess, but he followed Jesus, and then he changed. How about you? Jesus is inviting you to share in an adventure. Follow me. Come with me. Be like me. Same words. Are you smart enough? 5 minutes to follow him. Your life will be completely changed. Never be the same. Yes, Jesus will challenge you. And maybe you raise your hand, or you walk and say, hey, I want Jesus, but do something. Do something crazy today. Yeah, I know. Maybe you say, hey, look around. We all are believers here. What are you talking about? Remember what Jesus did? He called them 3 times, not once. So maybe Jesus called you. But I don't know how is your life, but if it's right here, and your dedication is right here, Jesus is calling you again. I will make you fishers of men. I will change your life and future. And you know what? You will never regret it. Be smart for 5 minutes. If you are smart for 5 minutes, that will help you with the impossible. And every time we'll think, oh, this is impossible, that will change. If you are that person, let's open in the Gospel of John, in John 6, chapter 6. Jesus was followed by a crowd of at least 15,000 people. And at a point they were so hungry, and Jesus wanted to feed them. And read verse 5 and 6. So important. Lifting up his eyes, then, and seeing that large crowd was coming toward him, Jesus said to Philip, where are we to buy bread so that these people may eat? He said this to test him, for he himself knew what he would do. Why Jesus asked Philip to test him? Why? Because he knew Philip. We know that Judas was keeping the money, but actually Philip was the administrator and the one in charge with logistics and protocol for the 12. At the time when Jesus asked the question, Philip already had the answer. You know why? Because that was his job. He already saw that coming. If he will ask me, and he started to count the money. He asked Judas, how much do we have right now? And he was prepared. And the answer was, it's impossible. It's impossible. Philip was an eyewitness when Jesus transformed water in wine. Philip was there. But he forgot. He forgot. He forgot what Jesus can do. And he said, what I can do is with 200 denarii. No, it's impossible. This is not possible. Philip was a man of small faith. Philip panicked actually when Jesus asked him about feeding the multitude. No, I can't do it. This is you and me when we forget what kind of a big God and big master we have. Huge, immense power. It's about God's plan. It's not about us. It's about His power. It's not about my power. And this is what we keep forgetting because He is God and we are not. Actually, I told you the first lesson in theology is this. Remember, I taught you once. First lesson in theology is this. God is God and I am not. Easy to remember. God is God and I am not. Well, Philip was thinking, oh, I will do it. No, you can't. If you are smart for 5 minutes, this will prevent you in the future to destroy your situation, to destroy your future. Without Jesus, you would be like Philip and his 200 denarii. With Jesus, you will have a multitude of 15,000 people, happy people, and on top of that, 200 denarii. You got it?
And breadcrumbs.
With Jesus, 15,000 people happy, 200 denarii. Without Jesus, nothing. Because you will pay for the bread and it will not be enough. Be smart for 5 minutes and choose Him. Follow Him. Don't ever forget that you are not alone. It's not about what you can do and I. It's what God can do through you with your limited resources. Another aspect in Philip's life was in John 12 during the Passion Week. And if you are smart for 5 minutes, that will help you with your rigidity. If you are a rigid person, that will help you. Some Greeks were interested in Jesus, and probably because of his Greek name, they approached Philip. But Philip was the least person that you go to. They approached Philip, and now Philip wanted to do things by the book. He was that type of person, to do things by the book, according to the protocols. And probably he was troubled when Jesus said in Matthew 15:24, he said, I was sent only to the lost sheep of the house of Israel. But Jesus gave them a principle, not a rigid command. Jesus identified for them the main priority of his ministry. And maybe Philip was thinking, oh, we are not here for the Greeks. What should I do? It's not in my book. There is no chapter about Greeks. So you know what he did? He went to Andrew. Because he knew Andrew was bringing everybody to Jesus. And probably, he's a thinker. Maybe he thought, well, if he will blow it, he will take the whole responsibility, not me. And everybody knows Andrew, but not me. My reputation, it's intact. So he asked Andrew, hey, would you like to introduce these Greeks to Jesus? And I don't know, if you are a rigid person, passionate about doing things by the book, this message is for you. Think about Philip. Jesus was interested in teaching you, and not just Philip, about this. He taught us to use guidelines to model our life according to the one that is in heaven. As a disciple, we are not soldiers, we are disciples, learners, students. Like any other student, we are allowed to do mistakes. Actually, a mistake, it's something positive. I know, we Romanians, we don't think alike. We think, oh, it's a mistake, it's the end of the world. Actually, this is our part of our culture. I don't know, how is it in Brazil? Same thing? Yeah? But we do. It's like, but actually, doing a mistake is the first step toward doing something right. How do you know that? Because you'll never do that mistake again. So, if you are that type of a person, learn from Philip. Jesus preached the gospel to the Greeks, actually, and he invited them to follow him. But was not Philip who brought them to Jesus, was Andrew. In John 12:23 to 26, this is what John recorded. And Jesus answered them, "The hour has come for the Son of Man to be glorified." Remember at the wedding when his mother said, "Do something," and he said,
Not yet.
"This is not my hour." Actually, he used this. He talked about this hour right now, and he says here, "The hour has come for the Son of Man to be glorified. Truly, truly, I say to you, unless a grain of wheat falls into the earth and dies, it remains alone. But if it dies, it bears much fruit. Whoever loves his life loses it, and whoever hates his life in this world will keep it for eternal life. If anyone serves me, he must follow me, and where I am, there will be my servant also. If anyone serves me, the Father will honor him." Yeah, Jesus challenged the Greeks. You know, the Greeks were Gentiles. They were not Jews. And he challenged them to become his disciples. Who will serve me? The Father will honor him. I imagine what was in Philip's mind. Maybe he thought, whoa, I was ready to tell them to go home because this is impossible. Greeks talking to Jesus, and now he invites them to be his disciples. I remember he invited me with the same words, "Follow me." And now he tells them the same thing, "Follow me?" It is so good to have friends like Andrew. He is not rigid like me. Because of my rigidity, I was so close to shut the door of the heaven for these Greeks. Maybe, I don't know. But if I would be Philip, I would be thinking like this. There is another situation in the Gospels, in John 14. Again, John. You see, everything that we know about him, about Philip, is in John, his friend. If you want to be smart for 5 minutes, that will help you with your unbelief. With your unbelief. We are in the upper room right now in John 14. Jesus encouraged his apostle to not be troubled because he's going to prepare a place for them to be with them forever. Thomas is the one asking embarrassing questions, if you remember this. And after him, you know who was the next one with embarrassing questions? Yep, Philip. Both of them thinkers. John 14, 7 to 9. If you had not known me, you would have known my Father also. From now on you do know him and have seen him. Philip said to him, "Lord, show us the Father, and it is enough for us." Jesus said to him, "Have I been with you so long, and you still do not know me, Philip? Whoever has seen me has seen the Father. How can you say, 'Show us the Father'? Show us the Father? Philip, where you have been for 3 years? You look to me, I was with you. Haven't you seen the Father? It is the last night before the crucifixion, and Philip was not clear when he was looking at Jesus who is Jesus? He enjoyed God's presence, but he didn't understand it. And sometimes we're like Philip, all of us. We are in God's presence. Here is God is with us. Emmanuel. And sometimes he is here and we are like, yeah, so what? Where is God? Who is God? And we are not clear who he is. And we don't understand him. I can see the other disciples rolling their eyes. They're like, oh, come on, Philip. You did it again. He was that kind of a person. Reality has darkened his faith. He was so amazed to see Jesus at work, but so hard to understand God, the Father, at work. If you are one like Philip, thinking beyond the facts we have about God and Jesus, it is so easy to be skeptic and doubtful. Don't believe. Just believe. Jesus is more than the Messiah. He is the Son of God. He is God. Philip actually was smart for 5 minutes sometime in his life, and now that had changed in him. His life was totally changed. Although he was in unbelief and he was doubting, that helped him. He changed. How do we know? Well, we know, from church history, we know Philip was in southern Russia and in Asia Minor. He was crucified, being bound on the cross, and he was stoned on that cross in Phrygia, in Asia Minor. Actually, that type of cross is even today called Andrew's cross, right? You know what I'm talking about? That type of cross like this,
Yeah.
like an X. He was put on that cross and stoned to death. Why? Because he was changed. He was finally changed. He went in and preached the gospel, something clear that he knew. He knew Jesus now, and he was preaching Jesus. It is said that Pope John III acquired Philip's body, and he had put it in a place called the Church of the Apostles. I don't know, I found this interesting. I don't know if it's real or not, but it's so interesting. Philip was a common person like me and you. And after that, everybody thinks of like, oh, Philip, yeah. If you are a follower of Christ, you are not perfect. You may be rigid. You may experience unbelief. You may rule out the supernatural. As long as you are dedicated to God, there is room for repentance. There is room for recalibration. Being smart for 5 minutes means to understand when these 5 minutes are in your life. I'm talking about that 5 or less than 5 minutes when you are challenged to follow Jesus and you say, yes, I want. To all rigid people, loosen up, relax. Jesus gave guidelines. The 10 Commandments were not given by Jesus to us, but to the Jews. Although you found 9 of them in the New Testament. 1 is not.
Which one?
Which one? The one about the Sabbath is not reiterated in the New Testament because the Sabbath was the sign of the covenant between God and His people. And we are His people, but we are the church, which is different than Israel. Jesus is God. Jesus is God. Look at Him and you will see the Father. You know, God lives in a bright light. You cannot come closer to this light. But what you can do is to come closer to Jesus. He is the image of God. He is God. If you want to know God, read the Gospels. Actually, I want to challenge you. How about this? if this year you will read the Gospels. I may say the New Testament. It would be even better. Now, how about this? Let's read together the Gospels. What do you think? Like when we have God at work, just to say something about what we learn about Jesus. You know, Jesus is the beginning of Christianity. We are Christians. That means we say that we want to copy him. But you know what? Between Jesus and me, there is more difference than a semblance. We are so different. How about reading about him and trying to copy him? Well, Philip did that. He copied Jesus, and he was really a good disciple of Christ. If you're a Philip in this world, be smart for 5 minutes and follow Jesus. This is my message for you today. This is the challenge that is first of all for me and for all of us.